Hello, welcome to today's webinar from the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation, Tissue Donation, Your Most Pressing Questions Answered. My name is Jen Kelly, and I'm the Family Support Manager for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. Thank you for joining us today and for listening about this important topic. Before we get started, I have a few guidelines to review. You're muted for this webinar, and your video will be disabled, but we do welcome questions during and after opening remarks. Please type your questions into the Q&A feature found at the bottom of the Zoom window. We will not get to every question, but we will try to answer as many as possible. We have three presenters with us for today's webinar. Patty Gustafson is the co-director of the Swifty Foundation, which was started by her son, Michael, before his death from medulloblastoma in 2013. Swifty is the catalyst for the national initiative Gift from a Child, a national postmortem pediatric tissue donation program in partnership with the Children's Brain Tumor Network. Patty coordinates the multi-institutional team of tissue navigators who facilitate the logistics of donation and provide support to families. Patty has a BA in accounting from Indiana University and worked as a CPA before earning a master's degree in early elementary education and becoming a first grade teacher. While raising her three children, she served on the boards of the ANSA Prevention Fund and the Gustafson Family Foundation. Since Michael died, her full-time professional efforts have been devoted to the mission of the Swifty Foundation. Ginny is the Outreach and Communications Director for Swifty Foundation. Ginny's expertise in fundraising, social marketing, and nonprofit communications has been a key component in launching Gift from a Child. Ginny works directly with the Tissue Navigator team, and she's an experienced business consultant, fundraiser, and power networker. She is out in the pediatric cancer community building collaborative partnerships to further the work of Swifty Foundation and build strategic alliances for fueling research. Ginny is the voice of Gift from a Child at events, conferences, and collaborating with our partner foundations and hospital teams. She plays an active leadership role in organizations focused on cures for pediatric cancer and serves on the board of directors for the Coalition Against Childhood Cancer. Dr. David Cram is a pediatric neuro-oncologist, an attending physician in the North Carolina Children's Hospital, and an associate professor of pediatrics at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Medicine. He specializes in the medical care of infants and children with tumors of the central nervous system. He is a clinical trialist and translational researcher with interests in tumor diagnostics and drug development and delivery. His ultimate career goal is to help develop new therapeutic strategies for pediatric brain and spinal cord tumors that are more effective and less toxic.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having us here. I'm Patty. I'm here to speak today, and I always feel funny saying thank you for inviting me to speak today about a topic that no mom wants to be an expert in, which is postmortem tissue donation. But I am grateful to be here, and I've become an expert in it because of the journey that my family had to walk with my son, Michael. Michael was diagnosed at the age of 10 while living his beautiful life as a first place state gymnast, an all-around great athlete, insatiable learner, and huge Harry Potter fan. After the usual treatment protocol, Michael was cancer-free for a year, and then he relapsed. Facing the reality of death at such a young age, he struggled, wondering what meaning would his short life hold. And it was right around that time that his pediatric oncologist, who was also a researcher, took Michael on a tour of her research lab. And seeing a cancer-ridden mouse getting an MRI in the lab's tiny little MRI machine really stuck with Michael, because Michael always thought he was going to grow up to become a scientist. And shortly after that lab visit, Michael came up with what he called his master plan. He was going to donate his body to science, and they would use him to find a cure for brain cancer. We're going to play a video I took of Michael in a parking lot in Florida. We were there on a bucket list trip for Michael to eat at a favorite steakhouse for the last time. And unfortunately, there was a prom going on, so there's a lot of commotion in this parking lot. He's a little distracted, but it's still a great video. So please play the video. We're not hearing his voice, though.
We're not hearing any sound. Still no sound. We still have no sound. Nope.
My goal is to help as many people as I can.
We could just start it over.
No, it's going. So what were you talking about, Michael?
My master plan.
And what is your master plan?
Well, I'm not saying anything definite, but the goal is to at least have something happen. I'm gonna give my life away. And we're gonna see if we can find a cure for cancer.
What's the goal?
To cure cancer. That's the goal.
Who are you helping, Michael?
I'm not really sure right now who I'm helping, but my goal is to help as many people as I can.
I don't know if I've ever heard the background that loud before, but hopefully you got the message of what his master plan was to donate his tumor tissue to science. So that plan changed everything for Michael. The angst and existential question of finding meaning in his too short life was answered for him, because as he said, through his donation, other children wouldn't have to go through what he did. And that awareness, that hope, it brought him consolation and peace. And the comfort that Michael received from his decision helped all of us face his death in a new way. It was a positive first step in our grieving process. But now I was tasked with making his final wish, his master plan, a reality. And despite being treated at premier hospitals, both in Chicago and Boston, neither hospital had any idea how to fulfill his donation request. And so I was in full panic mode, thinking I was going to fail him in this last request, until another mom connected us with some researchers that would gratefully receive Michael's tissue. And his pediatrician stepped way out of her usual duties and facilitated his donation. Receiving updates from the researchers who received Michael's tissue are a touch point with our boy and the greatest gift to our family. So you might have noticed that the title of this talk is Tissue Donation, the Final Chapter. And that's because in our work with the Swifty Foundation, we soon discovered that that's the foundation that Michael started before his death. We soon discovered that Michael was really onto something when he chose to write the final chapter of his life by choosing to donate postmortem tissue. But what we've discovered since then is how few families who lose a child to brain cancer are getting the chance to write that chapter. And that's because a decision to donate postmortem tissue can't be made unless the family knows it's a viable option. Many families may wonder about, organ donation, but that's typically not an option because of the radiation and chemo that the child's undergone. So therefore, it's imperative that part of every family's care plan includes their medical team helping them.
Next slide.
Oh, thank you. helping them make one last final informed decision about their child's cancer journey. And that's the decision as to whether or not postmortem donation is right for them. Next slide, please. So that's the final chapter for a tissue donation from the family perspective. When a child dies from brain cancer, the tissue that is donated is the tissue that escaped current treatments. Researchers need access to that tissue to discover why the treatment failed. So the final chapter for research is to be able to take that postmortem tissue and interrogate it to try to answer the reason why these children are dying. Sadly, there are so many subtypes of pediatric brain tumors that there are some rare types that have yet to be studied. And that's because many brain tumors are inoperable, and the only time researchers can study them is unfortunately after death. In addition, treatments change the biology of tumors. So the tumor a child dies from can be completely different from the tumor they were diagnosed with. So you can see why when researchers don't have access to postmortem tissue, their final chapter can't be written. And as a mom who lost a child to this disease, I'd say it's a very important chapter. There's a missed opportunity for incredible learning when postmortem tissue isn't available to study. And the really sad thing is children are still dying from brain cancer. The tissue is there, but for the asking. Families, clinicians, and researchers together can write this final chapter and change the story for the next child. Next slide, please. So to that end, Gift from a Child conducted a survey from January to May in 2021. 108 families filled out the survey, and we published an article last August in the Journal of Clinical Oncology based on this survey, stating the family's perspective of postmortem tissue donation. I'd like to share a few of the highlights. Next slide, please. When families donated, 79% of the time, it was the family who asked to donate. Whether a family donated or not, the healthcare team only brought up the subject of postmortem donation 21% of the time. And if a family did not donate, 59% of the time, no one brought up the subject at all. Next slide, please. Of the families who donated, they were satisfied with their decision to donate 98% of the time. Families who did not donate were satisfied with their decision only 20% of the time. Next slide, please. Families who donated were likely to recommend donating postmortem tissue to other families 96% of the time, and even families who did not donate would recommend donating 64% of the time. Next slide. Our foundation has worked to help create Gift from a Child because we didn't want other families who are interested in postmortem donation to have to struggle to make it happen the way we had to. This program can potentially benefit the family losing a child, the researchers in need of tissue, and the caregivers whose patients are dying can offer a family the opportunity to perhaps bring some good from their tragedy, paving the way for better treatments for future children. I'm going to turn this over to Ginny, our communications director. She's going to walk you through what families can expect as they consider donating, the basic idea of what the donation process looks like, and how our team facilitates these donations so providers can offer this choice to their families. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. The Gift from a Child network is made up of 6, well, actually now 7. We're happy to announce that Seattle, so we have better coverage in the Northwest, is now joining our centers of excellence. But we're made of these centers of excellence, which each have a tissue navigator. These centers and these tissue navigators are tasked with covering their entire region. They work across state lines. They work across institutional boundaries. They literally collaborate and work with each other so that tissue can be acquired from any institution and any family across the country. And what's really great to understand is you don't have to join anything. You don't have to be a center of excellence. You don't have to apply to become part of the Gift from a Child network. A family literally just needs to pick up the phone, or their caregiver can pick up the phone and call us. And what they reach is the secret sauce to, next slide. Is the secret sauce to Gift from a Child. And these are our tissue navigators. On the screen are some of the most compassionate and aggressive for their patients, people you will ever meet. They have met tissue on tarmacs. They have driven all night. They have found lost opportunities and made any donation possible. Each tissue navigator companions the family through the entire donation process. The whole idea is that this navigator takes over all the operational logistics of a donation so that the family and their care team can focus and concentrate on the patient and child. They identify and develop relationships and satellite resources across the country. Next slide. What is the impact of gift from a child facilitated donations? First, we want to make sure that any child anywhere can donate, but we also want to make sure that we're being collaborative and good stewards of this precious gift. Because of that reason, we have chosen to work closely with the Children's Brain Tumor Network. Next slide. Why we partner with them is their mission parallels ours in many ways. They connect people, institutions, and resources across the globe. They harness it to make the most of the data, and they empower research. Next slide. For example, the impact of supporting a single research or institution by the time they get through IRB and regulations, you're looking at one project every 5 to 10 years. The impact of our tissue being supported and part of the Children's Brain Tumor Network allows us to facilitate 50+ projects every single year. Next slide. I'm going to skip this slide. This is in there for all of our clinical people who might want to see what is available, open resource to anyone for the asking. So we'll go to the next slide. Same here, the portals, these are open data portals. It's really here just so when people get the deck, you're able to see the resources. Next slide. By reaching across institutional and state boundaries, since 2019, Gift from a Child has been able to facilitate over 240 donations. Of those donations, 130 of them came from referral institutions. That means they came from an institution that was not one of our 6 centers of excellence. And those 130 donations represent 75 different institutions. That's 75 places families were being treated that may not have had the opportunity to donate, either for lack of awareness or lack of opportunity or lack of resources. And we were able to support the family and the research community and make that donation happen. Next slide. By working with CBTN, we were able to be part of the first EXO-1 cohort, which was the first fully post-mortem cohort that was sequenced and sampled by the NIH. This cohort was submitted back in 2001, and 126 of our donations at that time qualified for the study. And what's really exciting here is that from that study, 87 projects and all the data generated by those projects has gone into advancing research, and 114 clinical trials have been started and 16 preclinical models have been developed. We strive to be excellent stewards of this precious donation. And by working with CBTN, we're able to leverage this resource. Next slide. Is this our next? I think this is where Dr. Cram comes in. Okay. So Dr. Cram is a fabulous friend of Gift from a Child. He has been so supportive and so kind with us. And as a pediatric neuro-oncologist, we can't imagine a better person to speak on our behalf.
Well, thanks, Ginny and Patty, and thanks for having me. I don't have as much of an organized talk. I am here as a representative of the healthcare team, which I think probably a lot of attendees are part of the healthcare team. And specifically, I come from an institution that's not one of the main centers of excellence, as somebody who has helped coordinate donations on behalf of patients. And I think what I can talk to is just to reiterate everything that's been said so far, how incredibly valuable this is. I am one of those people who does offer. I do offer it to all my patients. It is on the forefront of my mind. I'm a big believer in it, so I'm a little bit of a biased person here, but I offer it to all my patients. And I think I do so because I know families want to hear about it. And I know that from experience. I know that from the wonderful paper that was published showing that parents have admitted that they want to know about this in a survey. And then personally, families want to know about it. I've had families that have taken me up on it and have donated, and they're always deeply appreciative. I've had families that have said no thanks, but I've never had a family say no thanks and it come off, I don't know, badly or been off-putting, or, you know, it's when they say yes, oh, it's amazing. And when they say no, it's a no thanks. And that's kind of it. And so I have also gotten over the hump of feeling uncomfortable asking, feeling like it's awkward, feeling like this is something that I cannot talk about. And so again, I know families want to know that this is an option. Some will take me up on it and some will not, and that's okay. I know that it's really important because it fuels research. And I know that as a consumer of the cells and the tissue that's been donated, it is invaluable. I think that as a clinician and a clinical researcher, I know that the tumor that comes out at biopsies and at resection, it's so precious, it's so valuable, but it's also increasingly being used for clinical purposes. You know, no longer 10 years ago, it was, we take a bit of tumor out and it gets put on slides and the neuropathologist will say, well, this is what it is. And now we need that, but then we also need all this molecular testing done. Well, that uses more of the diagnostic tissue, leaving even less for research. We are in a situation where there is just less and less available tissue for research, period. And the postmortem tissue, first of all, is an enormous amount of tissue often, but second of all, it's a time point that we usually don't get tissue from. We oftentimes don't get biopsies on these patients towards the end, because why would we? And so this is an incredibly valuable time where this is tissue post-treatment to be able to fuel questions like, why did this tumor recur? Why did it not respond? What are the mechanisms of resistance? So as a consumer of this stuff, I mean, it is incredibly valuable. And then on a personal note, you know, as a member of the healthcare team, you know, I think Patty has talked about grieving and this being part of the grieving process. I think all of us who take care of kids who have these types of tumors, we grieve also. You know, we don't grieve anywhere near the level of the family, but we grieve also. And, you know, I think we all go into this field wanting to help families and wanting to help kids. And that's why we're here. And, you know, at that end time, when there's nothing left to sort of do or give, it's when we feel most impotent. It's when we feels like we're doing our job the least good. And this is now something in our toolbox that we can offer. It's something else that we can sort of do that's, oh, it feels so good personally as part of the grieving process. It's something else that we can do. And, you know, I have heard from families who have helped donate, and I continue to hear from them. And they're one recently, I think, emailed me in October, and they're posted on Gift From a Child's website and now on PBTF's website. And so like they follow along. There's an obvious legacy that's left, and they know where their tissue has been, and they'll tell me, oh, it's now used by X number of labs. And they'll tell me that their story is posted. And so it's incredibly meaningful. I want to say one last thing before I sort of stop my monologue, but I have coordinated postmortem tissue donations through GFAC, Gift From a Child, and then without the support of Gift From a Child. And oh my goodness, is it different? So with Gift From a Child, you know, I think Ginny just talked about the special sauce. It's these tissue navigators. And oh my God, I mean, they are there for you 24/7. I have called them in the middle of the night and they pick up. We exchange cell phone numbers. They make it so easy. When I need something, they're there. They, you know, we have to do some of the basic stuff, get consent, but if I can't get consent, they will get consent. They will coordinate with the funeral homes. They will coordinate with my institution's forensic pathologists. They're a trove of information and experience that I simply just don't have. And so they do so much of that. On the other side, when I have coordinated one tissue donation, not through GFAC, and it was for a non-brain tumor, I did it, and I'm really, really, really happy that I did it. But when I tell you that it took me probably tens and tens of hours to do, I'm not exaggerating. It's just, I don't know that I could sustain it. I will do it again if I need to. But it was really, really, really hard. And I think it's just a small example of, I think, the space that Gift from a Child has filled, this desperate, desperate need that we just simply can't do, that they now sort of do for us. It's a wonderful thing. I'm going to sort of stop my monologue. There's going to be time for questions at the end, I guess, and or Ginny or Patty, you want to prompt me? Is there anything else I can talk about right now?
Oh, that was just so fabulous to hear that from you. And it's very rewarding for us to know that your patients are so happy with the result of making that decision and hearing the impact they're having on research and the legacy for their child.
And for me, doing this work it's hard, it's challenging, right? And so to hear how we're helping a clinician, and that's exactly who we want to support. We want you to spend your time in the lab trying to find a cure for this awful disease, and to save you tens and tens of hours where you're on a phone or sending emails. That makes me so happy, because it's something that we can do for you, so you can be doing the work that you're so gifted to be able to do. So thank you for saying that. It's very encouraging for us.
And I will say that that's not an uncommon story. So it's not because it was your first donation that it took you tens and tens of hours. We hear that from clinicians who have done tens and tens of donations, who still say it takes literally 100 phone calls and tens of hours to effectively be able to handle this for a family. And that's time away, like Patty said, from research. So we just want everyone to know that we're available. We're available as a resource when you need us. You don't have to commit to using us every time you have a donation, but we're here if and when you need us, for a family or clinician to reach out at any time. So how does Gift from a Child work? How do we make that secret sauce come to life? Next slide. First of all, we have an abundance of resources. First and foremost are our tissue navigators. And as David so eloquently said, they go above and beyond. They know their stuff. They are experts with a caring heart, and they take extremely good care of families. We also have a family companion program, and this is often an underutilized program. These are families and parents who have lost a child to brain cancer. And they've been trained in active listening, not in coaching, not in steering families towards donating, but to listen and companion and answer those questions that only another parent can answer. And answer those questions that mostly your family members may only be comfortable asking another parent. So they're a phenomenal resource at any point in the journey with a child. And please take advantage of this program. And we try to match them by diagnosis type, the family type, do they have older siblings, younger siblings, because those questions are pertinent, how are, siblings reacting to the diagnosis? So we do an extensive list of questions and really try to match them with someone who can genuinely answer their questions. Our website is a tool for both families to hear family stories. We have about 15 families who talk about what donating meant to them, what the process was like for them. We have videos from researchers and experts in the pediatric brain cancer research area. There are print materials that can be downloaded. They are available in English, Spanish, and Chinese that you can share with your patients or download for yourself if you're a parent. We are launching a video online toolkit. Right now we have one available on our resource page that walks through what happens with tissue in the donation, in the research process. And it's filmed to be understood by both families and researchers. It's a fabulous resource for people to understand just how important this tissue is. And then specifically for our caregivers, we have a new video coming out called The Ask, and it talks about how to talk to families and when to talk to families and some of the words to say and what it's meant to caregivers like Dr. Cram, who have seen what it means to a family to have had this conversation. And then we still call it an 800 number, even though it's 844. 24/7, we have a navigator on call. I'm glad to hear they're picking up in the middle of the night. We do ask that if they don't hear the phone in the middle of the night, that within a few hours, we are always getting back to family members. Next slide. So how do you refer a patient, or how do you refer a friend or another family, or how do you get in touch with us yourself? The timing of when to address a donation with a family is really up to the care team. Obviously, as early as possible so that we can get all the pieces in place and the good relationships so that there's no hiccups and that it is as smooth and quick as possible for the family. Or when the family expresses an interest or asks you about donating as they're approaching end of life. What's really important to know is somebody can consent to donate at any point in the journey from day one, but they can rescind it at any point. It's not a binding contract. It just allows us to get the pieces in place, and you can change your mind until the very, very last moment. Next slide. Who refers patients to us? You'd be amazed at some of the referrals we get, because people care so much about these families, but typically it's the neuro-oncologists, the oncology nurses, child life specialists, social workers, hospice caregivers, and we receive many, many referrals from families who are referring other families to our program. Next slide. What do we need to start a referral process? So what we need is the basic information to put you in touch with the right tissue navigator. We need the patient name, date of birth, diagnosis, and then the best family contact and best medical team contact. Then the family is assigned to a tissue navigator who will work their magic for the family. We have 3 consents that are typically signed: the Children's Brain Tumor Network consent for collaborative research, the gift from a child consent for the tissue, and a hospital will typically have the consent as well. And as Dr. Cram said, we're happy to walk you through the consents. Every hospital's IRB is different. Some allow them to be done virtually, some do not. But we work through it and make sure the family has the opportunity to sign the appropriate consents. Next slide. Who coordinates the donation? Our tissue navigators coordinate it. That's why we fund a navigator at every regional site. Navigators companion the families through the donation process and coordinate all aspects of the donation. There is no financial cost to donating to the families. Next slide. This slide, I'm going to let you listen to this. I just want to prep you for 1 second. The young man on the right in this video is a brain tumor patient. He was 20 when diagnosed. So he was actively involved in the discussion as to whether or not he wanted to donate tissue. The woman on the left is from the same town as him, and her son donated tissue to the research project that led to the clinical trial that the young man on the right was part of.
Very clear to me that'd be an easy decision to donate my tumor, just because I see how it helps. I mean, I'm on the side now to where it's helping me, and I see those benefits, and it's just a really clear decision to me that after I would die, that I would definitely have my tumor donated as well, just because it's all about helping the next kid. And so I'm so grateful that you decided to do that back then. And it made it a lot easier for me to decide to do that if my time ever comes.
It's comforting to hear you say that you would want to donate your tumor as well, because I feel like you're old enough that you have your own voice. But for us parents that have smaller children, they aren't able to be their own voice, and we make those decisions for them.
I just keep thinking, you know, we've got these great doctors working so hard, and we've got these families that have sacrificed everything funding that fight, but the ultimate sacrifice really are the tumors, and they're making the most difference.
And from experience, knowing that Carson's tumor is what's helping make a difference and drive the research and drive the trials, it means a lot to me as a parent who's lost a child to know that his legacy lives on and he's helping other children like yours.
Yeah. Next slide, thank you.
Very clear to me that'd be an easy decision.
So while we're moving to the next slide, some of the key points from that are, that's really comforting to families, like she said, who had to make the decision and wonder would their child have made the decision to donate. And to see a young man so consciously make the decision, knowing he's likely facing death, that he would want to help the next children. And I find that spirit of paying forward permeates this entire community beyond any other community I've ever experienced. So a few questions, concerns that come up, and we can talk about them during the question and answer time, but family wishes come first. We can be flexible to accommodate most requests made by the family. We do not rush them away from their child. Generally, you're able to have an open casket even after the donation. There's no cost to the family. And one of the things our navigators do so well is they keep the family informed as the donation process continues. And we also do our very best to update them on how the tissue is being used and impacting research. Next slide. So the process, when a child passes, somebody has been designated to contact our tissue navigator. Once the tissue navigator is contacted, the navigator will take over from then and will process the donation and keep the family informed. That's why we say it's a one phone call. It's a two-step process. You sign your consent and you make a phone call at the time of passing. Some of this other information again is there, so it's there in your slide deck for future reference. Next slide. Same here, and we do share all of the tissue we receive. A piece of it is shared with CBTN, and we do take care of transportation, working with death certificates, hospital admissions, building access. There is so much that is involved. That we are glad to say most of the families that work with us never realize what has gone into making their donation successful. Next slide. So how can you help? If you're in this community, all we're asking is for people to build awareness that we are here to support any family, any caregiver, and any institution who would like to facilitate a donation to help further research and help the next family. I don't know what it is. Next slide. That's that. This is how you can get in touch with us. Again, you'll get this slide. And you can download all our resources, watch all our videos, and go from there. So that is the end of our part. I'd like to introduce Mike Henry. Mike Henry is the Director of Advocacy for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. He is the father of Eternal Star Blair, who passed away in 2020 from a rare embryonal tumor. His past work includes working with political, religious, and higher education nonprofits on policy and fundraising initiatives. Mike is a strong supporter of Gift from a Child and has complimented us by referring personal clinicians that he knows to use our program and helps other families. So Mike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. As Ginny said, I'm the Director of Advocacy for PBTF, but the most important job I've ever had was being a caregiver to my daughter. When Blair was inpatient, we really got to know our care team, and they got to know us a little bit. And as we made our transition off of treatment to focus on her quality of life, my wife and I were very fortunate that we had a lot of time to think about things like tissue donation and our potential impact with our daughter's diagnosis. It's incredibly rare. It's exceedingly rare. All of our tumor types are, but for her specifically, we knew that there was a lack of tissue for the teams that were studying her type of tumor. So, in this process, after diagnosis, there's just so much that is out of your control. And this was one thing that we had control of. This is one thing that we could do. We could have an impact. We could do good. And so for us, it was an easy decision. It's not something we took lightly, but in the end, it was easy. We approached our clinicians and our care team, and they did everything in their power to get it done for us. And we're just so thankful to them. After donating, after getting confirmation that the lab that's studying my daughter's type of tumor, that they had received her donation, we felt the sense of that Blair's legacy was continuing and will continue as long as those researchers are using her tissue and striving to make sure that no other kid like Blair passes away. So the whole process for us was swift, no pun intended. It was easy and it was rewarding. And just to tie a nice little bow on top of this, as Ginny said, we had Blair's clinician reach out to us a couple weeks ago and ask us to help with a family who was at the very end of life. And they asked us if we had any recommendations for organizations that could potentially help them with a tissue donation. I connected them with Ginny and Gift from a Child, and Swifty took it from there. And 2 weeks ago, I got a nice note from her clinician thanking us for connecting them and the work that Swifty did. It was incredibly easy for this clinician. Once the family had made that decision to get things done for them. So, and personally, in starting this position with PBTF, I've seen the impact that Swifty and Gift from a Child have had on the community and the importance of their work. So I'm just incredibly honored and thankful to be part of this discussion today.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing your personal journey with Blair and the decision that you and Kate came to. Thank you, Patty and Jenny, for sharing all of the information and how Gift from a Child came about and the legacy that your son has left. And thank you, Dr. Cram, for sharing the conversations that you've had, those difficult conversations in the clinic and the time that you've taken with the family, as well as the ease of using Gift from a Child for you and those families. I appreciate it. So we're going to do a little Q&A now. For all of you on here, please go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And I will start with some of the questions from registration. Jenny, you mentioned in your presentation that the decision is easier if it's made as early as possible or when a family asks. Mike, you had mentioned that you and Kate had a little bit of a runway, if you will, into making that decision. One of the questions we had, and this came up from a healthcare professional as well as a family, is there a preferred timing on when to have the discussion? So I'd actually, Jenny, like you to answer that, practically speaking, how much time Gift from a Child needs. And then David, Dr. Cram, if you don't mind answering that from the clinical side and when you actually start those conversations. Jenny?
So from purely practical standpoint, the more time we have to put pieces in place, the better the process goes. A lot of families have told us that being able to consent and now it's done, it's off their plate, they don't have to think, debate about it or worry about it from that point on. Ideally, we'd like to have, especially a child who is going home and is going home on hospice and will not be in a hospital, we'd like to have at least a week, if not longer, to be able to put all the pieces in place.
However, it can be done on shorter notice, usually, not always, but I mean, we've put it together quickly when a family wasn't aware and, you know, learned about it at a later time. It's just a lot harder to make it happen, and it may not happen. We can't guarantee that it will, you know, ultimately happen, but we put it together very quickly as well. So both sides.
Thank you for that. Dr. Cram.
Yeah, I'm so happy the question came up. I thought about talking about it during, and I just thought it would be better to pause and hope the question came up. And if it didn't, I was going to talk about it anyway. So this is the question. And I think so. The question is, again, always timing. This is the biggest barrier. I think it's the biggest barrier. It's timing. When do you do this? And the question is not really like, well, I don't have time to do it. So what the question is really, from the healthcare perspective, if we ask too soon or whenever we ask, are we signaling to the family we are giving up? And I think it's the exact same question, vice versa. If the family feels like they're going to ask their provider team that question, are they signaling they're giving up? We're feeling the exact same thing. And it is hard, and it's a very sort of tightrope task, but just, you know, I take comfort knowing, number one, I think we would be worried about the exact same thing. The provider team and the family, we're all worried about sort of signaling too soon the end, that we're all just giving up. So having said that, you know, the answer that I have is, well, I can't tell you exactly when to do it for every single family. It really is family specific. And like, I would hope that, you know, you have a relationship with your healthcare provider team where you can be a little bit open, and you know, that's the goal. I hope that I create that for my families. I hope that I feel that with my family, but you know, so it's pretty specific to the family. I think doing it, you know, on day one, if you know, on a new diagnosis, if the tumor is totally curable, well, that's obviously pretty early. And then doing it, you know, at the way end when it's hospice, and that's probably a bit late. So I don't know. I don't have exact trigger points. I really think about it at first relapse, you know, for something, and not just first relapse for a low grade tumor where, well, I'm going to try a second line or third agent or fourth or fifth. I think about it at first relapse if I think the prognosis is bad enough. And I don't even know how to define bad enough. Under 50%, 20%, I don't know. But suffice it to say, I think that's a moment in time where at least I pause and I say, I got to think about this. Is this the right time? How often am I going to see that family? Am I going to see them weekly, or am I going to see them monthly? Do they live 4 hours from my center, or do they live down the street? Do I, you know, when I'm in a room with them, do I need to sort of capitalize this on this moment, or are really there going to be moments that I don't need to do it this minute because I'm going to see them next week? Nothing's going to happen. Probably nothing. So it's all contextual. But I think starting in the way beginning, I know that I am going to be concerned that I'm signaling too soon that I'm giving up, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to sort of demonstrate that I have no more hope. I want to sort of tell them the really bad news, the bad prognosis. I want to sometimes introduce this concept of, you know, listen, we're not there yet, but here's this thing. And then I want to sort of package it up nicely and then move on to hope. And let's try, and we're going to do this, and we're going to explore trials and this. It's very contextual, but I think that the moment everybody's thinking about it, and, you know, everybody's talking about awareness, if everybody's thinking about it, hopefully it'll just come up organically. I would say that, if a family is going to ask me something like this, I would never, ever take it as you're giving up, that the family, that doesn't, but I appreciate that would be a concern. I would hope the same. And I would hope that if I bring it up, I'm not over signaling futility. But it's tricky.
May I add to that something that someone has said to us, and you kind of saw it in the video. Another approach to it, and it's kind of a soft approach to it, is you might notice that the young man knew about tissue donation because he knew his treatment protocol was based on someone else having donated. So I've had doctors say to me from the get-go, I say, I'm going to offer you these 3 clinical trials that you're going to choose from for your child. I want you to know that the reason we have these clinical trials, these choices for your child, is because of tissue that has been donated along the cancer journey. Some of them at diagnosis, some of them, after death. But the reason we have these, these clinical trials, these different options for your child is because of tissue donation. And just hearing that from the beginning, it goes in one ear, goes out the other ear, but it's mentioned and they kind of get used to the sound of tissue and donation, and it becomes part of the new vocabulary that you're learning as a parent that's in this awful new world. And then it doesn't come as such a shock later down on the road when someone starts talking about tissue donation. So I really, really value doctors that will do that, because I think the sooner they can introduce just the language of it and the value of tissue donation, I think it really sends a great message and helps families understand it.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, just to add and reinforce kind of what everyone has already said, I think all of this underscores the importance of open and honest communication with families throughout treatment and throughout their diagnosis and the whole cycle of the cancer journey. Because when it comes time to make that transition, for us to palliative care and then hospice care, it's a natural part of that conversation. When we're making that decision together with the care team, I think it's that's when it's appropriate to introduce that conversation as a part of this transition. And again, if you've been open and honest with these folks throughout their time with you, they'll receive it well.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to jump into a question that is connected to this and comes from one of our healthcare professionals. And Jenny, this is probably for you and Patty. What is the best way to increase the donations within our institution? It's a big one.
I think just off the cuff, for me, it's the team deciding that it's something they value, right? So if your whole neuro-oncology team values donation and you've had the nurse practitioner, everybody's on board, and you've got your pathology team on board, and everybody's saying this is something we value, then you're going to be bringing up the conversation with families. You're going to raise awareness. So families can't decide to donate if you're not bringing it up, and we can't assume that every family is going to know about it on their end. So if they're willing to educate families and talk about it, then I think that's how they're going to, increase the amount of donations they have. Whether families say yes or not, you can't control that. That's a personal decision. And our goal isn't even to get the yes. It's just that we feel it's so important that it's a family's decision to make. So if a clinician is not bringing it up to a family, they're basically deciding for the family that they're not donating, right? If the family doesn't know about it. So that doesn't feel right. So if the family learns about it and says no, that's great. That's fine, because that's what's right for that family. But not knowing about it and then later having that regret, oh my gosh, I wish I'd known, and then it's too late. And then they feel like they've missed this opportunity to share their child in a way that, could lead to some good. That's really difficult. So I don't know if that answered the question, but for me, it's just raising awareness and having the conversations and committing to everybody on the team, or designating, a champion. Like, I don't want to have that conversation, but there's one person on the team that's willing to talk to families and go in there and have this conversation if that works for their team. Jenny?
So And I would add to that, that's exactly what we want to have happen. And that's exactly how you increase awareness, but we'll help you with it. So a shorter version of what we've done today, we do it at grand rounds for people. We do it at department rounds. We'll come in and do a webinar. I think we did it when Dr. Cram went to UNC. We did it for his team. So we have a presentation that builds the passion for tissue donation and the simplicity of using GFAC. And we present it to the team for you. You don't have to explain it to your team. And then we make sure you have the resources you need. So that's been very helpful for many institutions to implement the program.
And can I jump in with a one potentially very simple practical solution would be most centers, big or small, have new patient sort of handbooks that are given to all new patients with cancer. And one possible idea is, if you can't figure out a way to sort of bring it up verbally, is that you can go online and just print out something and just slip it in there. And that way it's there. And they might see it never, they might see it on day 1, they might see it on day 536, but it's there, and it might sort of stimulate that or provoke that one conversation. Hey, that one time I saw that one thing. It might feel a little early to give it to every single patient. So you might decide who to give it to or how to triage that, or just put it in every one and say, this is, look, if it's brought up early, you say, look, it's not really that relevant to you, but we put it in all, just as a very practical way to just get it out there.
And we do have brochures, so it is an option for anybody who wants to do that. We have them. They're very nice. We have one-pagers. We have all kinds of materials. So that is definitely an option.
Bouncing off of that, a question from one of our parents attending. Patty, you had mentioned in the last question, educating the entire neuro-oncology team. The question that came in from the parent, and Mike and Dr. Cram, I'm going to start with the two of you on this, but who is the right person on my child's team to bring this up to?
Mike, you want to go?
I mean, the conversation that we had was with her lead pediatricians and her oncologist, because they've always been, they were always the people that we made the big decisions with. And so I think it's appropriate also because a lot of those folks interact with the research community and know people within the research community, and they understand really just how important tissue donation is and how valuable those donations are to the researchers that are lacking, real donations or real tissue to study.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the answer is whoever you feel most comfortable with. It's I don't know who that is on the team. I would hope that every single one of your team members would be receptive to something, but that's not the case, of course, anywhere. So whoever you feel most comfortable with, try it. I think you don't need to be a doctor to sort of trigger this, to sort of start this process by any means. It could be anybody on the entire team, and that's one of the beautiful things about this program.
And that's why we try to educate the whole team. We had a great relationship with our child life specialist. And so we always make sure that the child life specialists are a part of it, or you don't know if it's their social worker that they've created that bond with, or maybe it's their nurse practitioner. You just don't know who a family is going to relate to. It might be their chaplain. So we're at part of their palliative care team. So we're meeting with palliative care teams because every family is going to find somebody on their team, hopefully, that they relate to, and you never know who that's going to be. And so we want everybody to be prepared to be the one to bring it up, because they're going to receive it best from the person that they trust the most and that they know cares about them and has their best interests at heart. So
I appreciate that perspective from all three of you. I think that we all know that families will connect with different people, whether it's the child life specialist, their neuro-oncologist, their social worker. There are certain people on the team they just connect with more on their individual journeys. So I love the education for the entire team, and that there is no one person who is the right person for them. Looks like that is actually the end of our questions today. Are there any final thoughts from our presenters before we say goodbye? Anything you want to share?
Just to thank you to all of you at the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation for being such wonderful partners and collaborators with us. And of course, Dr. Cram for always being there for the kids.
We are really grateful for this opportunity. The only way we raise awareness is to, get in front of people. So thank you for making this possible. And David, you're always our best cheerleader. And I just can imagine how grateful your families are to have you as their doctor. I really admire the way you present yourself and how you are with people. So thank you. And I just wanted to say, Mike, I'm very sorry to hear about Blair and the journey your family had to take. I'm very sorry about that.
Well, thank you everyone again for your time today, sharing your expertise, your experiences in speaking to the families and healthcare professionals that were in here today. We will be sending out a copy of the slide deck as well as a link to the recording when it's available. So you will have all of our contact information for Gift from a Child as well as the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. If you have any questions about today's webinar or need any support or resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.